high. Just reset up a lot of my settings and it's yeah. Anyway, I'm a left-leaning political TikToker. I'm looking to clout shark off of you and eventually reject you when I get to the size where I don't need you anymore.
Fucking base.
So yeah, hell yeah. So anyway, you had this tweet a little while ago that I kind of wanted to question you about because I don't know exactly where you're coming from with it. So or I guess you didn't tweet it, right? So whoever did tweet it eventually deleted it. So I can't exactly find the exact threads. I might be missing some context here, but the tweet explicitly was someone said better ideas aren't always the most convincing ones. This is obvious. And you said, if you think this, you don't believe in advocacy, stay off the internet and stay in your lane. Stop trying to fuck it up for people who haven't lost faith in humanity. You are actively making the worst. You were actively making the world a worse place for everyone to live in.
Yeah.
So you said, yeah. So is the problem you have with better ideas aren't always the most convincing ones? This is obvious. Is the problem you have that like explicitly better ideas aren't always the most convincing ones?
I think if you genuinely have a better idea, I think you should be able to convince other people of it. I think there's been like a really vital skill missed out on, which is persuasion, and I think people have just like completely given up on it. I blame academics and I blame political messaging. I blame everybody for this. I think people just a complaint that I made like 2 or 3 years ago was that people kind of forgot how to advocate for their positions effectively, and we all just kind of like assumed that was like normal, and now it's gotten to the point to where like nobody knows how to effectively advocate for anything. Like communication is something that needs to be taught better, especially if you're an academic. You need to learn how to communicate better. It's not enough to just be like a scientist or whatever if you can't advocate for anything that you research, I think, in my opinion.
Sure, but I think even when it comes to academics, there's definitely some points where in academia especially, we don't explicitly say sorry, how to say this? I'm a little nervous. Sorry. I don't do a lot of live conversations.
No, you're fine, no problem. What's your TikTok handle?
Staxioms, Staxioms.
Okay. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, I do like philosophy and politics and shit like that.
No
so
problem.
I think when it comes to a lot of like conversations that we have in academics, like for like something that I think about a lot is when you give lessons on physics or whatever, you kind of break down to sort of like children, 7th graders, 8th graders, that electrons are kind of like solar systems and they rotate around the atom and the protons. That's like explicitly not true. That we're sort of like giving this barrier to entry when it comes to like real information. We're kind of breaking it down on a much smaller level, and we're kind of understanding people and we're meeting them where they're at. And I guess if we do this in academia a lot, that we sort of like tell sort of these half-truths in order to convey correct information. I guess that's kind of the idea that like that's how to convince people, is to sort of break down information a lot in a lot more small ways. So I guess I don't understand this idea that like better ideas often aren't the most convincing ones.
Okay, okay, I think I understand you're nervous, so I'm gonna try to break down what you're saying. I'm gonna restate it just so that I can make sure we're on the same page. Sure. So the first thing that you present is that like when we learn initially about electrons, you learn that you've got like a nucleus, and here's like the little electron, and he like goes around like a planet, right? And
yeah, for sure.
I think you get a little bit deeper into physics, probably in college, or maybe even in high school. I think you learn that there's like, well, actually, it's kind of like an electron cloud. Like at any point in time, there's like a probability that, yeah, maybe. Yeah. And then I don't even know in quantum physics if they talk about electron clouds or if they have whole other like wave functions that they use to describe the potential position of an electron at any point in time. It might get even more complicated. There's 2 things though. One is that any one of those concepts is pretty quick and easy to explain to an adult. Like even the electron cloud thing, you probably can explain to somebody, even if they don't understand like all of the intricacies and complexities, but you can probably explain it. And then 2, at the very least, the upper level concept is like, it's close enough. It's not false, but it's like, it's leading you to an area that's kind of accurate. But it's not like anybody, like, I feel like the comparable way for today's political discourse is like, well, electrons might not even be real, or who knows, who cares? And then that's where they leave it. And then you're like, well, hold on. Maybe we should be able to talk about electrons. Like, well, it's too complicated, you understand. It's like, well, hold on. Like, yeah, I don't truly believe, and maybe I just haven't gotten deep enough into any educational topic or whatever to know this, but I don't know if I believe that there are all of these topics that are just so unbelievably complicated. They're just impossible to convey to the layman. I don't think that's true.
I agree with you, but I don't think that we're saying that this is impossible to convey to the layman. All I think that we're saying is there should probably be some barrier to entry so that not all conversations should just be widely accessible to sort of like everyone on Twitter or on YouTube or kind of everywhere at all points. Like I don't think anyone is saying we need to strip these figures just completely off the internet. It's just maybe they shouldn't be in the most accessible points possible.
So,
that makes sense.
Okay, and then so this is the part of the conversation where, and this I understand this is challenging. I'm asking a challenging question, but like, can you give me an example of like a topic that you think would be fundamentally inaccessible to like the average human brain, where it's like if you're even exposed to this topic, like you're gonna get lost, and we can't have you seeing it because it's too much for you to handle. I'm phrasing it a little bit negatively, but yeah, but go ahead.
No, but I think that there are a lot of topics that if you give to the average layman, there will be some negative externalities, especially not like information about how here's a specific example that I think about a lot when it comes to vaccines. Sure. That if you give someone the information that vaccines are proven to be safe, right? That's not exactly explicitly true. Like really when it comes down to it, it's really hard to prove if something is functional within like a human body. It's really hard to prove that like nothing will be damaging, and really all we've done is we've tried to make sure that all variables are taken care of, and there's like less than a 5% chance that this is random. Essentially, if you try to have this conversation about, oh, hey, it's not necessarily that vaccines aren't proven to be effective. It's just that they're effective as far as we can see. I think if you explain that to the average person, I do think that there are laymen who would say, you know what, it sounds like science doesn't really know exactly what's going on, and maybe we shouldn't get these vaccines because it doesn't sound like science really knows what it's doing.
Sure. Can I take a stab at that?
Yeah.
So vaccines and vaccine misinformation and stuff that's a topic that I've spent a lot of time researching. So I've tried to like navigate these conversations a lot. And I'll be honest with you, they're difficult. Like it's not like any of this is easy. But like, so here's something that I would say. This is how I would approach that conversation topic. So we have it's actually kind of similar to the electron cloud thing. When we talk about medication, usually we talk about whether or not a medicine is safe or not safe. And that's kind of it. And I think when the average person hears that, in their mind, what they're thinking is like, okay, well, if a medication is safe, that must mean that it can't hurt you. And if a medication is not safe, that must mean that it's going to hurt you. And that's kind of it. But I think that like if you're having a conversation about vaccines or any medication, if you're talking to an adult, and I think we can have this conversation with adults, what we can say is, well, let's have a more fleshed out understanding of what it means when we say a medication is safe. Typically, when we say that a medication is safe, or is an effective therapy for a given disease, what we're saying is that if you take a certain medication, the chances of side effects are minimal, and the chances of alleviating whatever disease or symptom, whatever you have, is pretty high. It's generally what we're talking about with a medication being efficacious. And then like you can say that like there's lots of safe medication that can kill you. Benadryl will kill you. Cough syrup will kill you. If you take a fuck ton of birth control, you can have an abortion. Like there's all sorts of medications that when you do things, they can be really unsafe. But we wouldn't say that Advil is unsafe, even though it can cause some people, I think, because Advil, I think, is a blood thinner. It can cause you to have, is it heart attacks or liver problems? Maybe Tylenol is one that gives you like, yeah, there's a bunch of like medications we can point to. Like these have negative effects if you take a lot of it. That doesn't mean the medication is unsafe, right? I feel like I could have that conversation with somebody and in like a minute or two, flesh out a deeper understanding of what it means to say a medication is safe or unsafe. And then we can move on to the next topic rather than like just saying like, well, the vaccines are safe and that's all we can say. And I can't have anybody come on and talk about how they're unsafe because like, yeah, I feel like that fleshed out better understanding is a better way to approach it. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I guess what I would say is, so I've had this conversation with a couple of people who work in medicine who are like nurses specifically, and that's something that they're kind of encouraged to do is kind of just like almost avoid having these conversations about like p-values or like null hypotheses and all that kind of stuff, because to the layman it can kind of like almost warp their understanding of how science works. But they don't feel.
I agree with that, but one, if they're a nurse, they don't know anything about p-values. Okay, I already don't believe that.
Fine.
But also,
Sure.
but also the second thing is that like I don't think you have to dig into stats at all. We don't have to talk about like crossing null hypotheses or what p hacking is. Like that's like really upper level shit that I don't think is relevant to like 95% of conversation. Yeah, go ahead.
Even on a lower value, even on the lower system where it's just like, okay, well, we aren't actually explicitly 100% certain that this can't hurt you, that this will be safe for you. That conversation they suggest avoiding having. So I guess what you're like,
Well,
these are.
When you say suggest avoiding having, I'm pretty sure doctors are always going to have these conversations with their patients, though, no? Like, if you're going to be prescribed a medication, the doctor's going to talk to you about, here's possible side effects. If this stuff happens, you need to go to the fucking emergency room. But, like, I'm prescribing this to you because of, you know, hopefully it's going to help. Like, I feel like doctors have those conversations with their patients all the time, no?
Sure, those specific conversations, but I guess what I'm specifically saying is like, what if the vaccine isn't even effective at all? Like, what if it actually doesn't even stop COVID at all? Like that conversation about like technically there is a percentage chance, all that kind of information that technically is happening on a scientific level is kind of discouraged for the layman because we're worried about how they would sort of run with that information.
Yeah, but I'm a huge believer that the average person is a fucking moron.
Yeah.
I fully buy into that. My job makes me buy into that. I know that to be the case. But insofar as we live in a democracy, we kind of have to trust people to be able to make decisions, even if we feel like they might make the wrong one. And there's two worlds. In one world, when I look at how I exist in the world, okay, my job is to be a persuasive person. That's kind of what my goal is. If somebody comes to me and they say that, like, I think the vaccine side effects are bad, and I don't like that. And it's like, okay, well, let's talk about the side effects, right? I can have that debate, and we can argue on the level of fact there, and we can dig through studies and do that, blah, 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 blah. But if somebody comes to me and they said, the vaccine has side effects, and the government said there would be none, well, now I've got a huge problem because now the institution has undermined itself by saying something that's just not true. And whenever the institutions begin to lie about some things for the benefit of the public, I mean, you can obviously see how, like, it's a very short walk from that to I can't trust any of the institutions because who knows what else they'll lie to me about, you know? That's why I think it just can't be like, I think we have to be able to improve our messaging to communicate things that are honest and true, even if some of those truths might be difficult, because at the very least, then you've primed somebody to be able to accept, like, okay, yeah, like, not every vaccine is going to have no side effects, you know, not everything is 100% perfect. Like, some things might, yeah, I think that it's better to get people more into reality than to just lie to people and hope they don't find out otherwise.
I fully agree with that, but I guess I'm also worried about the other side of the conversation where we're just sort of like, there's no barriers to entries to sort of like any of this communication, and people are able to run with just sort of everything. And I think there's a little bit more of a balancing act that we might be able to do.
True.
And
but that balancing act is not banning everybody off of social media. That balancing act is getting lazy fucking tenured professors to actually learn how to communicate effectively and start jumping into the fray. I think they should be here. There was a wonderful lady, black lady neuroscientist who wrote a book about intelligence and IQ. Any idea what I'm talking about?
I have no idea. I'm sorry.
But she made the point to where, and it was seeing her in an article on, well, it might have been The Atlantic. She made a point, and I was like, damn, that's right. Where she's basically saying that, like, when it comes to IQ research and intelligence or whatever, all the academics have just, like, left the conversation. They think they're above it, or they don't want to be involved in it. And naturally, well, who's going to step in and fill that void? It's going to be like the lunatics online. And nobody wants to, nobody in academia wants to confront any of these challenging conversations. So either people like Jordan Peterson or I shouldn't say Sam Harris, people like Jordan Peterson or Ben Shapiro or any of the lunatics online are going to have it, or people like me, I guess, are going to try and come and pick up the slack. But, like, how much easier would it be if, like, there were actual academics, like, in these areas, like, responding to things on YouTube or doing shit like that, like, actually involved in science communication and not just locked away in their towers, you know, pretending that they can ignore everything and everybody that is saying bad shit will get banned eventually. That's kind of my issue. Sorry, go ahead. I'm talking about.
Yeah, no. I totally understand what you're saying, but I guess they're like, that just feels just a little extreme. Like, you're sort of pushing away. You're seeing some, like, very fair criticisms from one side, and you're just sort of, like, pushing to the other extreme. Because I do, like, I guess if we look at specific examples, do you agree that probably figures like Andrew Tate, I don't know, Milo Yiannopoulos, figures like this should probably be banned from, like, the public platforms?
No, I don't think so. Not unless they're explicitly breaking rules. But you talk about, like, moving from one extreme to the other. I would take an extreme position. And I would say that, like, I think there's arguments to be made that your academic discipline should either be eliminated or is just absolutely worthless if you can't advocate for any of those positions publicly. Because like shouldn't that be part of what you do? Like if you're working in academia research, like shouldn't you want to be able to make people understand this or make it relevant to a modern person?
No, absolutely, but I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Like I would never disagree that academics can do a better job of dismantling a lot of this information, and that we can we should be able to have conversations about how the scientific process works. But also, I am worried on the other side of just like these incredibly toxic figures just sort of enveloping the public platforms, and I don't know. I think that when you hear these sort of conversations, you can be worried about how some people might integrate it without being without being there to challenge them.
Yeah, and I agree. But then, so here are the questions: who's challenging Andrew Tate on the left?
I 100%, but I would never criticize anyone for challenging Andrew Tate. So,
well, but here's where I'm being critical of is there's no one there. That's the criticism. Like you can't. Not when I say you, I'm not meaning you in particular.
No, for sure.
You can't get upset about people like Andrew Tate when like the left has no counterposition. And like when the left has been screaming time and time again, it's not my job to educate you. We're not here to just talk to white boys all the time. We don't care about white men. Fuck, kill all men, blah, 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 over and over and over again. And then somebody from the opposing political side steps up to have that conversation and you're like, no, you're not allowed to. It's like, well, who are you presenting? Who is your champion, right? That's kind of the issue that I have, yeah.
Well, what I would say, like, obviously you're not familiar with my content, but like I push back against that kind of shit all of the time. Like I hate when people say like, oh, it's not my job to educate it, especially when there's I mean, the reason why people are gravitating so much towards Andrew Tate is because people are getting pushed out of conversations, and now they finally feel welcome in a conversation.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm never gonna criticize. I'm always gonna be there alongside with you to criticize the left for not being able to communicate to people and not being able to be willing to have these conversations. But I'm also worried on the other side of these incredible figures who are just sort of like there's no amount of effort that I would be able to possibly put forth that would ever be able to circumvent how much harm is being done by these figures. Does that make sense?
But there has to be, maybe not you on your own, or not even me on my own, right? But there's got to be some group effort to advocate or fight for the things that we believe in a way that's convincing to most people, no? Or do we really just say that like these ideas are unassailable? Like
I don't think that they're unassailable, but I think that I don't know. I guess I would definitely say we both can work on this at the same time, but also disagree with these controversial figures. I don't know.
Well, sure, careful what we're talking about. Like, I disagree, or I mean, I'm okay with it. I disagree with a lot of this shit I've heard Andrew Tate say. It's not about agreeing or disagreeing. It's whether or not they should just be like deleted from the public space.
No.
We're so scared about that. Right?
But there's a huge difference between being just disagreeing with something that they're saying, and I don't know. Like I don't know what the kind of shit that like Andrew Tate has said, but like he's advocated for, or he's mentioned like beating women and stuff like that. Like it gets pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
Oh, is that and what?
He's aggressive. I don't think he's advocated for beating women. To be fair,
he hasn't advocated, but he's explicitly mentioned that he has. Let me.
Okay, so just real quick, my understanding of this, correct me if I'm wrong, is there was a video that came out of him hitting a woman, but I'm pretty sure the idea.
Oh no, it's not the video, right? Because that was like consensual, right?
Yeah, the woman came out and said it. # believe all women. But I don't think he's ever advocated for hitting women. I could be wrong. But I've never heard that before.
I read it. I don't follow a lot of his thing, but I did read an article specifically talking about like because I was curious like why Andrew Tate has been banned, and there were a couple quotes there of like saying like, oh, if you meet someone who's like cheating, like and he started like talking about what he would do to her, and it was very very aggressive, and I'm worried about that sort of language just sort of being distilled into the public.
Yeah, possibly. Well, I mean, I guess I'd need like the full context of the clip. I'd have to hear it. So
sure.
But yeah, but I mean, like again, like I understand like some things are working. Like there's a lot of stuff he says that I don't like. But I don't know. Like I think that we should be able to present our own opposing viewpoints and then kind of tackle that rather than saying like, oh my God, he's so persuasive that like we just have to ban him from everything. Otherwise, there's just no shot. Like our ideas are so fucking like unappealing and unattractive that there's nothing else that we could do. Like that just seems a little bit defeatist to me.
I agree that I definitely agree that we can definitely be a little bit more a little bit more careful about who specifically we're banning. But like if we look at figures like Milo Yiannopoulos, who I'm like a little bit more familiar with, I mean he was on Bill Maher's show and he's kind of disappeared from the public, and I'm kind of grateful that we didn't fight that out in the what does Dave Rubin always say, the marketplace of ideas, like because I am worried about how some people might perceive how he's saying, because he's gay, so it's okay to make fun of gay people or say that they're lazy and not able to like work and all this kind of stuff.
Can't we just like bring out our gay people then and fight him on that? Or
I just I worry that bigotry is such a convincing argument, which was kind of the first tweet that you sort of took issue with.
It can't be though, right? Like like the faith in humankind is so low at that point. And I feel like for all that we've seen and done in the world, I feel like bigotry is something that is so easy to program out of people. Like just like being socialized around other types of people makes it really hard to be bigoted. That's why people that grow up in cities tend to not be racist as much, right? It's because they're socialized around different types of people. It feels so defeatist to me, the idea that like, yeah, these ideas are just pretty attractive, and humans are just going to human, and there's nothing we can do to change them otherwise. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think I'm that being that defeatist on that conversation, but your point that racism is easy to program out of humans, I don't know how much I agree with that at all. Like I think that there's a lot of really difficult works when it comes to like pushing racism or pushing like having these conversations about racism. It's not as simple as just be around Black people or be around minorities who are decent people. Like I think that's sort of that pervasive idea of like, this is one of the good ones though. Like I definitely believe in having these, in believing in other people, but we can also recognize that bigotry is a very pervasive idea, and we can I think it's fair to worry about that.
Yeah, I think it's fair to worry about it, but like I really do think it's that easy. That's kind of the part of my frustration is that like
okay.
I don't know, like I've seen a lot of people that have pretty crazy thoughts that like when they meet a person, like their whole perspective on things shift. And that idea of like, well, he's just one of the good ones, that's good, because knowing that there's at least one of the good ones rather than they're all horrible is the first step to thinking like, okay, well, maybe just the basis of a person's skin or whether they're trans or not is not enough to know whether or not I hate somebody, right? Like I think that's kind of like the slow steps that you take in that direction.
But I worry that there might not be other steps if all we're doing is just sort of interacting with people who are good, because you can just sort of like, you can work around your bigotry and just say, well, he's one of the good ones. I can still have these bigoted thoughts about this group because this person.
Yeah, but at some point that cognitive dissonance is going to grow and grow, right? Like you can't maintain that negative of a viewpoint of groups of people if you're interacting and engaging with them so much. Like at some point something's going to snap or break and you're like, oh fuck. That, in my opinion, but I guess this is hard to prove, but.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I definitely see where you're coming from.
Because if what you're saying is true, I'm not a very like politically ideologically driven person, right? I kind of like to follow the facts where they go. Everybody says this, but like if it was the case that like bigotry was that ingrained in us, like I'd probably be some form of like white separatist, because if you're making an argument that strong, that's essentially the Nazi argument, or I shouldn't say the Nazi. That's the white separatist argument of like bigotry and tribalistic differences are so ingrained in us that no amount of liberalism, no amount of conversation or rhetoric can get us over it. Well, if that's the case, then maybe we should all just kind of like be our own thing.
I don't think I was that. I don't think I was that extreme when I said that like it's insurmountable. I just said it. I don't think that it was easy. I think that a lot of people have these conversations about racism and they're like, look, it's something that we were just sort of taught as kids, and sometimes we can be honest and say that there is probably maybe some ingrained, almost like like psychological reasons for racism. Like I'm not a huge proponent of like evolutionary psychology, but it is sometimes worth considering that racism is almost benefited us to look at someone who looks from a different tribe and just be like, they're probably hostile towards us, and push them away from us. I think is a very normal thought.
I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. But like, we can overcome so much through social programming. But this is like part of like 100%. This is what part of like what education and everything is. Like even like I love to look at like some of these like alt-right groups that exist in the United States, or some of these far-right groups. It is unbelievable how fucking diverse they are now. Because they're like there are clips of people where it's like, like black people and white people are like, listen, man, You're racist, I'm racist. At least we got that going for us. Even though they hate each other. Like, it's wild to me how diverse. Like, when I look at like the America First movement, they've got black people, they've got all sorts of different types of white people, Italian people, Irish people, and it's like these are people that, you know, like 100 years ago would have been racially diverse enough to hate, or racially different enough to hate each other, and now they've like come together with their racism. So like even in some of the most racist movements, I feel like damn, like people can get along more than they realize.
Sure. And I think even 100 years ago, I remember seeing this picture of like the Nation of Islam at like a Nazi rally or something like that, and it's like, well, they're for the idea of separation.
Sure.
Right? So I agree with you. I guess all I'm saying is I don't know. Like sometimes it's fair to say, look, we should try to work out these differences, but if there's such an antagonizing force that seems to be so harmful and so destructive, I think it's fair for people to want to excise that. And if you have frustrations where it's like, okay, but where exactly do we excise? It seems like the people making these decisions are incredibly biased. I'm willing and want to have those conversations about who should be excised and what sort of what those problems should be that we are excising. But I guess this sort of like extremist position where we shouldn't just do anything and then we should just work it all out in the marketplace of ideas feels idealistic.
It's absolutely idealistic. I'm gonna soy out. Wait, are you American?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna soy out from my country a bit. Technically, isn't our like entire democratic experiment like unbelievably idealistic? Like the idea that we created a constitutional republic, the idea that we had no kings, the idea that we separated powers in such an unbelievable manner that it would seem almost like ridiculous that in a time in the world where there were so many monarchs, there were so many like authoritarian or totalitarian top-down regimes. Like I think every part of the American experiment has been pretty exceptional in terms of what it's tried. We are like the most diverse country on the planet to an unimaginable amount if you go to any major of our cities.
I don't know how accurate that is.
What do you mean by that?
Even a little bit. Well, Canada is way more diverse than us, and also
hold on,
like African.
Well, no, fuck Canada.
I remember
that
looking
is
this
absolutely not true. In what way?
Because I claimed the same thing, that I said America was super diverse, and then I looked it up and I was like, oh fuck, this is like not accurate at all. I think almost there's this metric to like determine how someone diverse is by like you look at the people close to you to determine how, I forget what it's called. I looked it up like a month ago or whatever. I don't remember the exact metric, but the U.S. is like middle of the ground.
Okay, I might be fucking insane. I've been to Canada a lot of times. I don't remember seeing any black people there. Am I crazy? They might be in there in Canada, but I've been to Toronto. I didn't in Montreal. No, I've been to Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver. I've been to multiple places in Canada multiple times. I don't remember seeing very many black people. There were like two.
But that's like, I agree with you, but we're both operating on anecdotal evidence. And when I looked it up, the U.S. is not that diverse. And also, I will say, I live in a very conservative state right now. We're white as fuck too. Like, there are absolutely some incredibly white areas in the U.S.
No, yeah, absolutely there are. Okay. Canada is 3.5% black people. Okay, fuck these losers. Okay, 15.6% of the population defined as a visible minority. Isn't that number like 45% of the United States?
Hold on. I'm going to need to look up how
go bring it up. I'm curious. I'm super curious about that. I feel like major U.S. cities are unbelievably diverse.
So I remember looking up diversity metrics. Yeah, the DEI is what it's called. DEI for countries. Because I had this conversation with a Canadian, and I was like, no, we're absolutely more diverse than we are. Okay, I'm... per country. Fuck, I don't remember. This was like a month ago that I looked this up.
How do these people define like most diverse countries? I'm so curious.
It's called the DEI, and maybe it's not. Fuck, I looked this up forever ago. I don't know. I might be talking right out of my ass that like U.S.
Sure. Well, okay. Let's say that I grant you that. Well, because it's not really that important. But I will say that like regardless of whether or not Canada is more diverse than us, fuck Canada. Regardless of whether or not Canada is more diverse than us, the United States is a very diverse country. Will we agree with that?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Sure.
Sorry. Yeah. We don't have to have on the individual side. So So if the United States is a very diverse country, and if we've been, I would say, relatively successful so far, we've overcome like a ton of issues related to our diversity, whether it's women's suffrage, the abolition of slavery, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like to come to a point where like we can't have these conversations anymore because now they're too hard, or some of these people are too spooky because like we're too scared about certain things. Like, I don't know, it feels like it. I feel maybe I am idealistic, but I feel like we can do better. I feel like we can keep pushing in that direction where we do have the challenging conversations openly. Like if MLK was able to do these things in the face of like black leaders being assassinated and killed and attacked in the streets and everything, I think we should be able to have people on Twitter that say racist things. I think
absolutely,
should, yeah.
but also, you brought up civil rights, and it is interesting that with a lot of these conversations about diversity, there are some things that we've just kind of decided we're not having a conversation about. Like when it comes to protected classes in this country, or like who is allowed in spaces when it's kind of left up to the public, there are times where we kind of step in and say, you know what, you don't get to make these decisions anymore because you're precluding black people from this area. You're forcing them to sit in the back of the bus, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I do think that it's fair for us to say at some points, okay, maybe we do need to step in because you guys are fucking this up for everyone.
I disagree.
Okay. What?
I would have to. This is what I would like to do. It's hard to do this, but like I'm curious, like what a topic would be at, because here's the issue: is that I feel like this line of thought has led us to some areas to where this is a criticism I made a few years ago. I think it's more true today than it was when I first made it. I think that at some point in time, the entire country was very invested in figuring out like, should black people be in the same places as white people? Should women have the same rights to work as men? Should gay people be allowed to be married? These were conversations that were heated. We had huge disagreements. It was like active public discourse. And but we had these conversations, and I feel like most people were probably able to have or give some take about whether or not a thing was justified or wasn't justified. Like that was something that we were all kind of expected to be able to do. And I feel like there are certain areas where we could be exploring these conversations that we no longer are, namely academic institutions. That like we should be able to have challenging conversations related to these topics, and we should be able to defend our viewpoints on these related topics. But now that they're all just kind of like taken for granted, now people have lost the ability to do it, and I think that's really scary. Yeah, go ahead.
So anytime you're mentioning academia, I'm just going to flatly agree with you, because there shouldn't be any conversation precluded from academia, and it's kind of gross to me that professors are stepping away from conversations because they aren't willing to challenge.
Or even when I say academia, I mean like for students on college campuses as well. It seems
no. I agree with that, though.
Okay.
Like, I guess all I'm saying is that, like, to me, there's a difference between stepping inside of an institution that the whole point of it is to challenge you and to have these difficult conversations, and some fucking dipshit just wandering around YouTube and just stumbling at it.
Well, but I feel like that's where it starts. Because like if we've given up in colleges trying to educate our population, because college, I would argue, is probably one of the big places where we should be building that up, that inoculation to these kinds of like bigoted or like racist or xenophobic or whatever thoughts. It should be happening in college. But if we've given up doing it there, I mean, then of course, like the general public is going to be lost. And then from there, it's like, well, we've lost the ability to have these conversations. Nobody knows what to say anymore. Like maybe at this point, we might as well just, ban it from all places because we can't count it otherwise. Like that evolution of thought is scary to me.
Yeah, I can understand that, but can't you take the position that we can have these conversations in college classes, but not on a YouTube comment section?
But then the question is, well, how do we decide which conversations are going to be relegated there? And then at some point, you're still basically saying like, okay, well, even though we're going to pretend that like we're kind of like have an open area of ideas to discuss things, like that's not actually true. Some things just can't be discussed publicly, and these are those things, and they're only going to be torn apart in classrooms by teachers that obviously hate these ideas.
Don't you agree that there are conversations though that we can't really have publicly? Like, for example, should black people be allowed into a restaurant, right? Like that's
I think these are the most important conversations to be able to have publicly. That like the challenging ones like that, because at the end of the day, like our laws are going to reflect like what an average American believes about these particular things. Because the scary thing to me, what I see happening on the other end, is we no longer have those conversations, and then we lose the ability to have those conversations, and then at some point all of human society is looking around at each other trying to figure out like, well, wait, why the fuck do we even believe this thing? And then when somebody like charismatic shows up to challenge it, well, now we're like, Yeah, fucking A. Wait, why the fuck is everybody allowed to be in the same area, whatever? And now we don't even know how to have the conversations anymore. It's like completely hopeless. That's my
Sure, but
worry. Yeah.
sure, but these sort of these conversations specifically within like the red pill community or something of the sort, I think that we have had these conversations about, hey, should women belong in the kitchen? Should they be allowed in places of work? Should they have the freedom to sort of pick and choose the career options that they want to have? Has been had, and I think most people have considered that settled. And this reemergence can be worrisome. Like I don't think anyone's thinking that they can't defend whether or not women should be allowed to work or stay at home. I guess we're just worried that there's an emergence all of a sudden.
Yeah, but I mean, like, isn't that? It sucks, but that's kind of the struggle of our. That's kind of the struggle of our political system, right? Like, who was which loser said that like the something about democracy has to be washed anew with the blood of fucking. You know what the fuck I'm talking about?
I think so. Was that that sounds familiar.
Yeah, one of our founding father nerds said some shit. Jefferson said something like, "Yeah, the Constitution has to continually be washed with the blood of."
Yeah, that was Jefferson.
Yeah, Jefferson. Sure. Yeah.
Or at least.
So, but like,
Yeah,
I think that our democracy, I don't think there is a such thing as like that issue settled. Like, I think for a lot of points in time, there's going to be a lot that's up for debate or contention within our government, and I think we kind of have to be like, democracy requires, it demands, I think, a level of vigilance in order to defend it. I don't think it can ever really be taken for granted, but this is kind of like the higher responsibility placed on citizens that exist within a democracy. Is you can't really sleep on it or try to legislate away what could be genuine disagreement in the populace, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be real with you. You're preaching to the choir right now, but I guess I think that you can just take a little bit more of a principled approach when it comes to the most extreme conversations and say, you know what, maybe that's not something that. I guess I keep coming to back to the civil rights movement, that if anyone comes back and says, hey, you know what, maybe Black people should be precluded from this business, you kind of got to get ousted. Like, there's not too much of a we've kind of had that conversation, and we can't really legislate that, and our laws reflect that with protected classes, that we kind of say, look, we can't have this debate over and over and over again. We kind of have to settle it and say, you know what, Black people just need to be allowed into wherever they kind of want to go.
I mean, I feel like the settled debates have to come through like a public, I don't know if you say zeitgeist or whatever, like because we try to settle things in too heavy-handed of a way. I think we run a risk of like getting fucked in the future over not being able to have these things truly settled. I like to deal with concrete examples just so we don't get lost in the hypothetical too much. So like, I think gay marriage is a really good one. I think we had huge fights in the United States over whether or not gay people should be allowed to get married, and we fought, and the Supreme Court came down with a decision. But like, for the most part, we fought about it so much publicly. I think we all kind of like that's a settled issue. And when I say settled, what I mean is like, we all discussed it, we all got it out of our systems, and we kind of are now like, yeah, okay, gay people can get married. It is what it is. Boom.
That depends on the issue, though, because like
I agree. It depends on the issue, because now I'm going to point to something else. Abortion. Yes.
100%. Yeah.
That's
100%.
an issue that was not solved.
We've been arguing about that for 80. I don't know when Roe v. Wade was.
Yeah,
60s?
It's not solved. We tried to solve it with the Supreme Court, or it almost got solved with the Supreme Court. But obviously, anything that can be granted via the Supreme Court, which is unfortunately a surprising number of very important liberal positions, anything that can be solved with the Supreme Court can be taken away with the Supreme Court. Same thing with executive action. But we haven't had. I don't think we've done a good job at communicating with the public about things relating to abortion. Like, that's a thing. Like, both sides are just atrocious communicators at it. My body, my choice is fucking stupid. You're murdering 100%. A baby is fucking stupid. Like all of the, yeah. Like, we're totally past each other here. But I feel like we should be able to have. We gotta be able to have these conversations. Fuck.
I agree with you, but I guess when it comes to some issues, we kind of have to say, look, when it comes to feminism, just because we're also talking about Andrew Tate and like red pill communities as well. When it comes to things like feminism, letting women sort of have the autonomy that they deserve in a free and liberal society is too important to hash out in the marketplace of ideas.
So what happens when public opinion slowly changes, and then you get a new leader that comes in, and now you're fucked? Like, now what do you do?
Here's where I'm going to be idealistic. I don't think that can happen. I don't think that people are going to be that. I think that people believe in the idea of women being able to choose what they want in a society that can't happen again. And maybe that's where I'm being too idealistic, where I don't think that people are that far gone that they can be swept up in this fervor, so much so that 50% of the populace will agree and will have institutions that are changing and
Yeah, so
laws
like
that are
I
being.
would have agreed with you post or pre-Trump, but like Trump clearly proved that that wasn't the case because we'd censored and destroyed and gotten rid of like all of those types of speeches and all of that type of thought, and then Trump showed up out of nowhere when most of the country thought it was impossible for somebody like that to win.
Sure, but also I don't know. Donald Trump was also a deeply unpopular president. Like he was also got pushback constantly from for every single thing that he possibly did, from on an institutional level and also on a population level. Like there were riots in this street in so many things that he did.
Sure, like I don't know if I would say he was a deeply unpopular president. I would say he was a very divisive president, or not
Sure.
divisive, divisive. Like the people that like him really like him. The people that hate him really hate him. But like Donald Trump de facto owns the Republican Party right now. Like he probably had some of the highest approval ratings. I think of any.
I hugely disagree with that. I don't think that he. I mean, if we look at who won in Potola, who won in Alaska, like a huge reason why she won was because they were able to do ranked choice voting, and a lot of the Republicans were siding with the non-Trump MAGA Republican and would rather take a Democrat over Sarah Palin, who's stuck with Trump the entire time. Like I don't know how I think the Republican Party is incredibly fractured.
It
when
is
comes
fractured, but the reason why it's fractured is because like there are so many people that are literally like Trump loyalists in the party. Like that's been the challenge of the Republican Party, is trying to find itself while Trump is like almost like owning them. Is like the challenge, I think.
Sure. I don't know. I look at a state of that's so red like Alaska, where a huge fraction of the Republican Party is saying, "Look, this Trump loyalism is becoming such a problem for this party that I would rather stick it out with a Democrat than Sarah Palin, who's stuck it out with Trump." And I think I don't know. I think it's fair to say that Trump is pretty unpopular, deeply unpopular.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well,
Maybe that's just a difference of opinion. I don't know.
uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, I feel like right now, like the whole Republican Party is like holding its breath to see like how the elections are going to go, because
Sure.
everybody's so worried about how much power Trump truly has over like the Republican Party.
Yeah, and to be fair to you, like I'm kind of picking and choosing my because I'm looking at Alaska, but you could point to Liz Cheney, who got ousted because
Oh,
she
yeah,
turned
true.
so hard against like yeah, I don't know. So it's kind of hard to say when maybe that's not exactly fair of me to just sort of point to one specific election and say clearly Trump is not that. Yeah.
Yeah, but okay. Anything else?
I kind of wanted to talk about something else if we're able to just completely switch gears
Yeah, go for it.
on something. So I had a friend talk to you ages ago, maybe well, not ages ago, like a month ago or so. Her name was Elle. I don't know if you remember her. She was she wanted to talk to you about transmedicalism. She worked for Somewhere News. I don't know if you remember this. But you mentioned so I kind of want to talk about trans issues and transmedicalism if you're interested.
Yeah, sure.
You mentioned this a few times in that conversation, and I think probably before. I don't watch your content super much, so correct me if I'm wrong. But like, you have this idea that a lot of trans people have communicated to you that you've re-mentioned that trans people would still be trans and know that they're trans if they're on an island, if they're like completely away from society.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess my question is that something that literally anyone could ever say about themselves? Like, do you think that it would ever be fair to say, here's how I would interact if I was completely divorced from society? Like, I don't.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty extreme statement. Yeah, that you could argue there might be some misunderstanding there, but like when somebody says that to me, I think that the idea that's being conveyed there is just that like some feelings about being trans are so ingrained and like biologically tied that it's not just a matter of like, oh, like I wear a dress and somebody used my pronouns and now I'm happy. That it seems to run a bit deeper than that.
Sure, but would it like I guess biologists would even contend what even is nature and what is nurture. Like that's such an ongoing conversation that to say like, oh, this is biologically engineered within me and not something that can be socially changed. I don't know exactly how fair it would even be to say that, if
Sure.
that makes sense. Like,
Potentially, to some extent, right? Nature nurture distinction is a little bit illusory because neither one can truly exist without the other, right?
yeah,
That's
I
just.
guess that's kind of my point is that when we talk about changing these social issues and they're saying, well, look, I would exist in society. Like society isn't affecting whether or not I'm trans. I think can be a I don't know how I don't know how fair of a statement that could ever truly be. I don't know if anyone could ever really say that about themselves.
I mean, potentially, but I think there's probably like we could probably speak to like differences in environment versus biology, right? Like even if we can't concretely say that it's like one or the other, there's probably some difference in terms of things that are determined a little bit, right? Like schizophrenia has like a pretty high heritability. There's probably some biological things going on underneath there, even if like culturally there are things that are turned on societally, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, but I like for example, I had a my brother when I was like really young. He used to like want to wear dresses or whatever, just for like seemingly he just was sort of interested in wearing dresses. And my mom found out, and my brother like just started crying. He was like, "Please don't tell dad." And the thing is, like, we were a fairly not deeply progressive, but like no one ever explicitly said to him, "Hey, you can't wear dresses because you got a penis," right?
Sure.
Like no one ever told him that. That's just something that you gets displaced into you, just de facto living into it in a society. And I don't. I guess when we have these conversations about how people would operate outside of society, I don't know how helpful or correct those opinions could ever be.
Sure. I mean, there's going to be a challenge there for sure. I would agree with that. Um,
Okay.
I don't know what the prescription is there. Like, I have to take people a little bit at their word. Like, if somebody tells me that, like, oh, like I'm gay, and I think this is just like a biological thing, I'm not about to argue with them. That like, well, is anything truly 100% biological? Like maybe something might have turned on your gayness at an early age, which is actually entirely possible. We don't know where sexuality comes from. We can correlate it to some genes, but we don't know if it's like you have the gay gene or the straight gene or whatever.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think the prescriptions that generally come with trans issues is breaking apart the idea of gender in general. And when we're trying to do this, a lot of the trans people that you have specifically talked to about this issue have said, I don't know how helpful that will be because these social issues have not influenced my decision to be trans. Does that
Yeah,
make
I
sense?
guess.
So
Yeah, so the challenging thing there is the breaking apart gender stuff seems to run contrary to at least the wishes of a lot of trans people that I've spoken to, and then that's going to be incredibly challenging / damaging on a societal level as well. So that's a huge prescription that like that might be the right choice ultimately, but I'm not convinced that the argument has been made for that yet.
Well, I guess what I would definitely say is that the argument hasn't been made against it because what I often hear is that like, well, if I lived on an island, the I'm not being affected by my society. This is a biological issue, and I think we can definitely look at a lot of the harm that occurs when we try to put people in boxes when it comes to gender.
Well,
So,
but you think you could put more harm than benefit there?
in terms of gender,
Yeah.
yes. Do you not? I don't know. I
It
think that
feels
that's
like gender
almost
has been such a pervasive concept throughout almost all of human history. I would be shocked to think that there's more negative than good that comes from it.
Well, to go back to a previous conversation that I had, I illustrated a lot of benefit that we had forever ago when it comes to racism. Like I could say that gender made a lot of sense when it comes to like who should be tended. I don't know anything about history, so like maybe this evolutionary history is just completely incorrect. I know that a lot of people bicker about this, but like let's just say for the sake of saying that, oh, it makes a lot of sense for women to be the nurturers to take care of kids, to plant biologies or whatever, and then men go out and hunt stuff. That could be a huge benefit at the time, but I think if we're looking at society right now, I think that gender has ultimately like I could look at the past and say that gender has been beneficial, but I think that right now the way that it works, I think it's ultimately been more harmful. And I think I would that's almost a I could definitely like almost an inarguable sentence
What
in
it
my
feels
opinion.
like gender is so important to so many different people though. Like a lot of our behaviors are gendered. Like a lot of the ways we find value in life is related to gender. Like I don't. I'm not even saying I don't believe you. I'm saying
May-
I don't even know how you could even begin to approach or argue that from one position or another. Yeah.
I get I don't know. I guess I just don't see a lot of benefit, and maybe I don't find a lot of worth in my gender, so maybe I'm just like the odd one out here.
Yeah, you might
But
not.
like
I don't. I don't think I do. I don't give a fuck. If I woke up as a girl tomorrow, I wouldn't give a fuck. I'd sell OnlyFans pictures, and I'd be okay with it. But I think there are a lot of people that do draw a ton of like importance or value from their gender, whether it's their roles or their sexuality or whatever. Like it feels that way. But that feels like it'd be a really difficult conversation to have one way or another.
sure, but if we're sort of like uh if we're destroying this idea, like abolishing gender, like let's just entertain that for half a second, wouldn't people still be able to draw a lot of really great feelings that they have for I don't know how people feel. I don't know how people feel gender before, like wearing a dress or like having a beard or something like that. When they still be able to interact with those ideas, we just don't necessarily put them into boxes and force
I
them
have
to.
no idea. I truly don't know that. Like, I think people like to be put in boxes. I think it makes people feel very good and very safe. Like, when you look at how we associate with each other culturally, it seems to be the case. This is personal observation. So if somebody has research to prove me wrong, go for it. I'd be shocked. But it seems to be the case that we are very much like our worth and our esteem and everything about how we feel from ourselves is very much derived from how we interact with other parts of society, how other people see us and how other people feel about us. That's a really important thing to like 99% of humans. That's why when like even when people tell you to like be unique, stand out, do what you can to be your own person, like, well, how do you do it? It's by buying the things that everybody else says is really good, right? Look at like fashion, for instance. Nobody's out there truly being unique. You're trying to buy like the best of the things that everybody else agrees is like these are the things you need to have to be like the most unique person, and you know that because every single person is saying it. Like, I don't think people truly want to be unique. Being unique is really scary. I think people want to be like the best of what is normal. I think generally, and I think
Sure.
gender roles kind of play into that. There are like people want to have a set like list of behaviors that they can identify with, and they can act like, and they can act through, and like the performance of your gender and like how it plays out in society are all things that we can celebrate. And I think people in general like that. That's my feeling on it. I guess I got.
Um, yeah, but wouldn't you agree that all of those being pushed into those boxes can ultimately be incredibly harmful for the people who are feel more comfortable being those odd ones out? Like this idea that
It can be, yeah.
there are weird people
Mm-hmm.
essentially. It's like, oh, I we want to make sure that there are boxes so that we can feel normalized can be incredibly ostracizing to the people who are weird. And I don't know why the most like to me the most reasonable position to come out that is maybe this box is doing more harm than good. Maybe
Well, like to
pushing
some,
these people.
so like when I argue against like fucking like nationalists and all these weird people or whatever, like usually what I say is like we should probably try to create a society where anybody can do what they want without being ostracized for it. But it seems like a little bit too far of a step in the other direction to say, oh well, we should just throw out every form of like categorization we have because some of them are harmful, like gender. Like, because it seems like there are a lot of people, as dumb as I think it is, there's a lot of people that draw a lot of value from those types of categorizations. So we might be losing something important by just completely throwing it out, as dumb as it seems. But again, it's hard to prove
Sure.
one way or another because that's a really like.
Yeah, and like maybe I just have a different understanding of the abolition of gender in general because what how you described it is like people should just be able to be free whatever they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Is kind of to my idea that perspective. It's not necessarily like trashing all of this idea. I don't know. Maybe I just have a different definition than you do, or I've heard from different people.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know.
Do you want to drag your friend in? He says he wants
Who's my
to.
friend?
Wait, am I crazy? Oh yeah, Rum1n8, that guy.
Oh yeah, sure.
He said he wanted to
Yeah,
contribute before
sorry.
we finished
He
talking.
is my buddy. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Gotcha. Yeah.
No, no, no. Yeah, I just when you said my friend, that could be.
Yeah. Sorry, I
double
just kind of said
different
that. Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry. I just mentioned that because he talked to me. He wanted to chat with us before you left. Did you want to?
No, no, yeah, that's
was there
totally
anything
fine.
else you want to talk about before I drag him in?
No, no, yeah, you can bring him in.
Okay. Hold on one sec. Hey, what's up, loser?
Okay, number one, I can't believe Stax just like flatly fucking rejected me in front of God and country. Are you
True.
kidding?
Wait, what?
That is
What
true.
did I do? What did I do?
That was kind of cringe.
What the fuck did I do?
My friend? Who the fuck is that? Oh,
No,
that
you
guy.
you just said my friend. You just said my friend, and I also
You don't have more
mentioned-
than one friend. You don't have more than one friend,
first
okay?
off, I mentioned a previous conversation with a different friend, so I didn't know who you were talking about necessarily. Also, what I will say is that your name is so fucking dumb. I've been thinking about this for the longest time, Rum1n8. Are you supposed to
It's
if you look at
Rum1n8.
Exactly. You're pronouncing the 1 and then you're pronouncing the 8. Are we supposed to pronounce it Rum1n8 or are we supposed to say Rum1n8?
We don't need you anymore. I thought I was going to contribute to this conversation.
Am I supposed to? Is the 8 supposed to be a B or am I supposed to pronounce it like an 8?
All right, fine, be that way. Okay, listen. All right, I got to ask you guys two things about the GOP and Trump popularity thing, and then your Destiny, specifically your take on the free speech angle. Okay, I was getting the impression on the free speech thing, or on the platforming thing, or like the best arguments are the most effective. Is that tangentially related to like free speech absolutism? Because it seemed like the conversation was kind of blurring there.
I don't know when you say free speech absolutism, it's going to depend on what you mean by that. Like, I'm not going to say you should be able to like make death threats to people or whatever, but
barring like advocating for violence or whatnot, do you ever buy deplatforming?
Almost at this point, almost never. Yeah, there might be something that changes my mind about that over time. But right now, what I see is I've seen like a lot of people culturally on the right send their strongest warriors into the ring to fight, and people on the left aren't willing to place anybody out there, and they're saying like these ideas are unbeatable, and I just don't buy that. That's where I'm at right now.
Certainly, unbeatable logically or like in
rhetorically.
Terms of okay, so that's where I'm a bit confused. Okay, certainly we agree that on the facts, they are eminently beatable. But, you know, there's that quote that's attributed to Mark Twain. I don't know if he ever actually said it, but, you know.
That by the time the truth has its pants on, a lie's made its way half around the world or whatever. Yeah.
I heard shoes, so I don't know where the fuck you got pants from or where your mind is going. Okay, but yes, gotcha. I heard shoes. The same sentiment. Do you not think there's any truth to that? And if so, if you do think there's truth to it, what do you think that's attributable to?
I think there's a little bit of truth to it, and that some positions that emotionally feel good, they can like be easier to transmit. But I would disagree that that has to do with it being a lie. I don't think that it's specifically a lie will make its way around the world quicker than a truth is. I think it's just more that things that like are rhetorically more effective or feel good will transmit way faster than like necessarily truthful things.
But that like absolutely, but like it's definitely what is the most interesting to the audience. But sometimes those are lies, right? So
yeah, but then you have to find a way to make your truth interesting.
Well, yeah, okay, right there. But see, I think Stax has a point, though. Stax right there has a point. Like,
sometimes the truth is not interesting.
Yeah, no. So like, there was like this MIT study that came out in 2018. While you guys were talking, I remembered it and I was looking it up. And like an analysis of social media at MIT, they found out that like disinformation spreads 6 times faster than like fact-based verified information. And surely you don't believe it's just because
it is. It's boring. Truth tellers suck. Like, what is fact-based information? It's like, here's the fact check by CNN, blah, 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 blah. And then what is the misinformation? It's Russell Brand. Hey, guys, today I'm going to talk about blah, blah, blah. Like, they've got, like, their own little figures.
Okay,
they've got, like...
Russell Brand is British. Is that your British accent?
I don't know. I hate Russell Brand. I'm just saying that, like, they work really hard on their messaging. People on the right spend a lot of time on this shit, and they do a really good job at it, and we suck at it. And then to say that, like, well, look, it's because they're lies, that's why they transmit so much faster. I don't think it's because they're lies. I think it's because they put a lot of effort into their messaging. We put none.
Yeah, but here, let's look at a specific example, because something that I think about a lot. I saw this New York Post article where it's like, kid dies after taking the vaccine, 1 day after taking the vaccine. And then you, like, read the article, or you look a little bit more into the information. He died from a car crash, right? Yeah, sure. But, like, that thing got circulated a million times. How the fuck am I supposed to compete with that? How am I supposed to say, actually, it's not a global conspiracy. Actually, people aren't dying from it. Actually, that's just not the case. There's nothing interesting about what I'm saying. And it's so interesting to say, yeah, this guy died and people are dying and there's this conspiracy and there's all of these people behind it. Like, that is something that's so enticing.
Was Fauci driving the car that killed the kid?
I'll have to look into it. I
No, it was actually Hillary Clinton's bodyguard, but nice try.
True.
Like this is like, I understand what you're gonna say, and I'm not gonna disagree with any of the. Obviously, this is the world that I live in, right? So I see how fast this type of stuff travels, right? But here's my here's my issue: is that it feels like nobody on the left is even trying, and then there are like genuine missteps being made when it comes to communication on the left. Like we all agree that that happens, right? That
sure.
they're making mistakes. And then so to go from that and then to say that like, well, this war is unwinnable when you haven't even fielded any soldiers yet, like it bothers the fuck out of me. Like I think you can go after the credibility of sites like these enough if you hammer home enough about like, well, this is a fake headline, here's what actually happened, here's what actually happened, instead of just like saying that like, well, it's clearly fake news, let's just ban it from Facebook and move on. Like you can call me idealistic, but like I mean, I just don't
think you can systematize it. I don't disagree with you at all, and I don't think Stacks does either. I am going to speak for Stacks, as a matter of fact. You no longer have a right to speak for yourself, by the way.
You're not my friend, so who knows?
Exactly. I mean, apparently not. But anyway, I don't think you can systematize it. So, like, I agree with you that the left and left-leaning advocates have to be as rhetorically effective as possible. I don't think anybody in their right mind would dispute that. But I think Stacks' initial objection was kind of the blanket statement that the better argument or the better case will always win, or should always win. I guess maybe in like a perfect world it should, but like I'm just seeing too much of modern politics clearly shows that that's not the case. So there was like one guy, I think his name was Rusty Bowers. He was the Arizona State Speaker, and he testified before the January 6th Select Committee. Mm-hmm. And he won like a bunch of awards. He was the one who like Rudy Giuliani and Trump were like trying to get him to throw out the electoral votes in Arizona, and he testified against Trump and gave like this beautiful speech about how he's a Christian and what Trump was asking him to do was in defiance of his faith and unconstitutional, all these things. But then he also said, like the day before he gave that public statement before the January 6th committee, that if Trump ran against Biden in 2024, he'd still vote for Trump. Like, and that's a
really complicated. I don't know why he would still vote. There might be a whole bunch of different things at play there that make that.
But surely you don't think that there is a rational case to be made, especially for this guy, to vote for Trump over Biden if he believes that what Trump was making him do was, against his faith, was unconstitutional. That he's
but there might be other things that guy values more. As silly as I think that is, and I do think that's ridiculous, but like I think we've done a really poor job at making the case for democracy. Like people even on the far left don't seem to care that much about it anymore. So it's not surprising to me that like that all those things you're saying could be true, but the guy's like, yeah, but I'd still probably vote for Trump at the end of the day. It's like, oh, okay, well.
I think look, I've already ostracized you as a friend anyway, Rum1n8, so might as well just continue with this. To be fair, maybe that person does believe that that's against his faith, but what also might be against his faith is the murder of 10 million babies every year, right? Like, and he's like, you know what, abortion is just too much of a deal for me, so
my parents are single issue abortion voters. They would never support. If Trump were to come out as pro-choice, I think my parents might actually drop Trump. It would be like the most unbelievable thing for them. But
Trump is pro-choice. In fact, I think he even said, did he?
Careful, no.
He campaign on being
Trump
pro-life?
actually. He one of the strange things he said in his campaign was that he'd be okay with some money going to Planned Parenthood, but he also came out and he literally said, it was with an interview with the CNN guy, he actually said that like women should go to jail if they had abortions. But originally he was like more chill on it, but he came out as like pretty crazy about it.
Well, I'm glad Stacks cleared the air on the fact that he's anti-abortion and pro-life. So believe me, there's going to be a TikTok video about that. Okay, fine. All right, so you can rationalize Rusty Bowers, continuing his allegiance to Trump in the event of a 2024 face-off with Biden. Okay, but what about? Let's go to a broader example of just like the relative popularity of conservative commentators relative to left-wing commentators. Do you really mean to tell me that, Steven Crowder, Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin, that they are just their success is attributable to just being more rhetorically effective than Brian Tyler Cohen, David Pakman, Vosh? Clearly,
I do think to some extent it is. I feel like on the left there's a lot of like scolding, a lot of condescension, a lot of like you're not good enough to understand. Like I think that a lot of people get that feeling sometimes from people on the left, and I think it's gotten really bad. Like the last really effective left-leaning communicator, I think I would say is maybe Jon Stewart. But past that, it feels so scoldy.
Well, Jon Stewart's definitely based. That's true. But I just think it's interesting then it sounds like, because I guess you have like a total absence of faith in the left's ability to be rhetorically effective in a way that I don't. Because
I don't have an absence of faith. That's why I've got more faith. You're the one with the absence of faith. You're saying they can't be, so we got to ban these fucking guys. I'm saying I think they can be.
Well, wait a minute.
They just haven't tried it. Yeah.
I'm saying I guess, and again, I don't know about Stacks, I'm thinking that there's got to be some sort of combination thereof. Like, I don't believe the idea that that the best argument always wins the day. I think like you guys established that there is this clear emotional resonance for a certain degree of bigotry and like anti-intellectualism among certain groups. And we've all talked about how the MAGA strain of the GOP is in many ways just a really, really big cult. So by definition, like rational, like I don't think you can. Let me put you like this. I think that you can make a lot of progress with people in one-on-one conversations. You're an example of it. You clearly have de-radicalized people. But I think the problem exceeds the ability to catch up with it, if that makes any sense. I think it's like trying to put a forest fire out with a squirt gun. Like if you can isolate the flames, maybe, but it's a problem to me of scale. And maybe, so how do you address that? Like,
I just think everybody everywhere needs to be doing a better job. There has to be less like these people are lost or unsavable or these people are irredeemable or blah. Like that thinking needs to go away, and then people need to go back into the idea of like, okay, well, everybody's got ideas, like here we go, let's see how well we can convince people of what we believe. I think that needs to be like the standard MO rather than like the exception for a few people.
I absolutely agree, but I think what we're kind of unfortunately in this case is what we're kind of unfortunately in right now is the fact that if you want to maintain truth, we only have a couple ways to tell a story. But if you're not bound to this idea of truth, you can kind of tell whatever story is interesting that you possibly want. And you got two ways to solve this. Either you're not bound by truth, which is a direction no one here wants to go, or you kind of have to start limiting how they speak as well.
All right, goddamn it! I'm gonna get him on something. Okay, so I thought of another one. Okay, Fauci and masks. Haven't you said repeatedly or defended Fauci shading the truth, lying, whatever about?
I don't know. I don't think so much I've defended him doing that because that was almost certainly a mistake. I just try to defend the idea that like just because he said something dumb or whatever doesn't totally discredit everything relating to masks. But like that's an example of somebody telling a lie that like came to backfire a fuck ton and undermined a lot of.
Do you think that Fauci could have said, look, guys, actually, you probably should wear masks, but because of the limited availability of PPP, PPP.
Personal protective. It's PPE, personal protective equipment, I think. Yeah.
PPE, sorry. There were too many Ps. But yeah. Then where's PPP? Was that the loan?
PPP
that's the loan forgiveness.
Payment protection program.
The PPE, due to the limited amount of it, the limited availability of it, we would prefer to triage that and make it for essential workers and healthcare workers. You guys just stay the fuck home. But yes, they are effective, and we would recommend that you wear one. You think that could have been sold in a way that a majority of Americans would have complied, or the vast majority? Like, what should he have done if, in hindsight?
Yeah, I think some kind of statement like that with a government order or something, I think would have been preferable.
I think what Fauci was trying to avoid, though, was like a mass panic where it's like, yeah, sure, but one mask specifically is not going to prevent all doctors from being able to get it. So I'll just do this for myself. And then you have like the tragedy of the commons where just like sort of everyone is feeling that way. And everyone just sort of like leaps and just says, you know what, sure, they advised against it, but they also said masks are going to work. So I'm just going to go ahead and take that mask. And I think it's fair to be like, we just need to be a little bit cautious sometimes when we're talking to the average person. When we're talking to the layman, maybe we need to be a little bit more careful.
Okay, I'm going to agree with you that we need to be a little bit more careful. But I'm going to say that should be reserved for times of like great national crisis. So like lying to the American public about the existence of the Manhattan Project, that's okay. But lying to the American public about the risk of like a vaccine or wearing a mask, the bar is set way, way, way too low if we're deciding to lie at that point.
So wouldn't you say that what Fauci should have done is just say, hey, don't get a mask, but they are working? And then what would you say if there was a mass panic and suddenly doctors can't get them?
That's why I'm saying it should have been paired with some kind of government order. Like, that would have sucked, but what we're in right now is really, really, really bad. People don't fucking trust the NIH or the FDA about anything related to anything. Like, that's not good. Here's something that I think is probably true. I don't have any data to back this up. I'd be curious to see it. It wouldn't surprise me if we bred a whole new generation of anti-vaxxers in the United States. I know some people are saying it's just the corona vaccine, blah, 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 but I bet it's going to be like every new vaccine that comes out now, all the dipshits on the right are going to be talking about how they don't trust them.
Haven't we had that? Haven't we had that for ages though? Like, I mean,
well, it was a fringe movement. It was a fringe movement like Jenny McCarthy on the left, and so that's what's funny is I tell my conservative family members and friends that I'd like them to give me the anti-vaxxers back because they can't be trusted with them. I'm like, I remember when it was just like a bunch of fucking weirdos, like again Jenny McCarthy, you know, who didn't believe in vaccines and whatnot. But that was such a fringe element where even rural conservatives like looked at that with disdain because I mean I grew up in a red state, still live in a red state, and there was no controversy about any vaccine I had to get for public school. Like nobody gave a shit.
Dude, my mom was, who again is an insane fucking Republican. She was militant about getting vaccines for her children. They were like non-negotiables, and it was like above and beyond whatever the school schedule was. It was like a huge thing for her. But also,
where was she on the COVID vaccine? Wait, just
I've had 2 family members that have died so far from COVID, 2 older members, and she hasn't gotten vaccinated. She never will. And she's an at-risk person. That's what she's on the COVID vaccine. But when we were children, all I heard about vaccines was that, like, Stevie, because my mom and dad were both Air Force stationed in Okinawa, other bases in the world, it was huge on vaccines. Of course, if you're in the military, you know how important vaccines are. There's not even a question. Like, there's a whole thing where anytime you go overseas, they line you up and they fucking poke you with 700 different... And not only did they feel that way, here's, like, the real kicker. Not only did they feel that way about vaccines, they felt that way about vaccines despite the fact that my dad is partially disabled from a bad reaction that he got to a vaccine. He can't really raise his shoulder above his head very well. So even though he had a negative reaction to a vaccine and he's lost part of the function of his deltoid, even though that's the case, they were still massively pro-vaccine. So much so that they got every single one for us. We were getting fucking flu shots and shit as kids. But now with the coronavirus vaccine, yep, she didn't get it, and she's probably not going to get any vaccine ever. Like, that's how mind-fucked conservatives have gotten over vaccine shit.
Maybe we live in just completely different areas. But
yeah,
like,
sure.
Specifically where I live, pretty rural conservative places. Like, my mom has been pretty anti-medicine because of, like, a really bad situation that happened where my brother was misdiagnosed, got, like, some bad medicine, and... like completely all aboard the MLM train, like the don't trust any institutions, we have to be aboard. And from where I'm at, that is not treated lightly. That is not scoffed at, or at least like almost my entire life, people have always just been like, yeah, we can't really trust these medical institutions. Who knows? With like Monsanto has always been in the conversation where like we can't trust these, we can't trust anything, and we have to just rely on all of these MLM organizations because this salt water will cure cancer. Or
I might be crazy, but I feel like in the neocon days of the Bush, I'm crazy. I feel like in the neocon days of the Bush shit, I thought Republicans loved big business and trusted that shit like almost implicitly. Like these big businesses are the foundation of like American capitalism and innovation and blah, blah, blah. I felt like my parents and everybody, all the Republicans sucked off big business like crazy.
Republican... No, Hank, well, he's got a point.
You're saying they have two contradictory thoughts?
No. Back then, in the neocon days, Republicans loved big business. But in the new populist days, now they hate it. Charlie Kirk and all the new wave Republicans hate big business. But the neocons, I think, would have been called corporatists by like the Tea Partiers and the Trumples of today.
I don't know if Charlie Kirk I doubt these right-wing populists now are still consistent on big business. I'm sure it's one of those situations where they'd be happy to weaponize them under different circumstances. They're probably anti-big business now because they feel that they're getting the shaft on the political zeitgeist of the U.S. and how big businesses are at least, paying lip service to left-leaning culture takes. I mean, it's funny because I pointed this out, and I know I'm not the only one, but it's like, to me, this is a case of the right wing being hoisted by their own petard, because for decades it was about decoupling the private sector from government regulation. Businesses should be able to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Service whoever they want, whatever. it's usually the right that's opposed, like antitrust laws and things like that. And now the shoe's on the other foot, and they're like, oh,
because of
shit.
the tech companies, because of Facebook and Amazon and all these companies. Now they see them as the enemy. So now Republicans are the ones that are fighting for Section 230 protections need to be removed, and we need to break these big companies up, and we need to regulate them as public utilities. Do you know how mindfucked I am when my mom goes from hating the Internet Neutrality Act or whatever under Obama, because she's saying the government should have no business to interfere with internet communications at all, to saying that Section 230 permissions need to be removed, and now they all need to be split up, and the government should be like monitoring like the censorship on, like, Jesus Christ. Yeah, sorry.
Well, even at will employment, that's another one, because that's the other part of it. So again, right-wingers traditionally have been proponents of reducing, if not outright eliminating, employee protections and supporting at will employment. And then if some data analyst at Google gets fired because, you know, he was like that, I can't remember the guy's name, but you know what I'm talking about, like 4 years ago, the guy.
The one who made like the presentation or the.
Yeah, that guy. And there was some nuance.
The stuff about gender roles or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there was some nuance there, no doubt, but he got shit canned, and of course the right freaked out about it. Like, how dare Google choose to fire an employee? Like, again, that to me, I mean, I know it's a separate topic, but it's just funny to me, where it's like, yeah, everybody saw this coming except you, and now you don't like it because you're on the other end of it. So I have like zero sympathy whatsoever.
Sure,
but no, I guess where, other than Stacks apparently being anti-vax and pro-life, and I'm glad we clarified that issue.
Yes, absolutely. You can mark me down for that.
Do you not think, given where we are politically, because you talk about crisis, okay, and you said like it was okay to conceal the Manhattan Project, do you think like constitutionally, because you were just talking about this when you were reviewing the Biden speech about how uniquely dangerous and that Trump is, and the Trump strain of the Republican Party are, which, you know, Stacks and I feel the same way. But I support President Trump not being on Twitter, because of course I don't think he has demonstrated it's very, very difficult, if not outright impossible, to just simply succeed by refuting his arguments. He's endangering the Republic in a very real and tangible way.
I understand what you're saying. This is what it would take to convince my mind at this point, right? I think Trump's ban was okay, given like the almost explicit calls for violence. I think it was pretty fucking weird. Like, even though it's scary that he got banned, at least from Twitter, I think he should have been. But I feel like the left hasn't tried to argue for their side. It feels like you're supposed to take it, or else you're a loser or a bigot, or that's it. That's the feeling that I have. And if it was the case that it felt like there was a huge experiment where the left had been trying to push for things and make arguments, and then it wasn't working, and maybe I see like, oh man, like misinformation is like crazy dangerous and there's nothing that can be done about that, maybe I would start to feel differently. But I just don't see the effort at all. And to like give up when there hasn't even been an effort made is like, that's the thing that kind of bothers me. Yeah.
Well, I don't think that either of us are advocating for giving up. I think we agree with you that efforts should increase and be more robust and more consistent. I just think that we accept that it's not always going to work, and there are times when it doesn't work that the consequences are going to be outsized.
Sure, so and I agree with that, but I haven't seen it. I just haven't seen it tried yet from the left. I think that once Trump came by, I think we just completely gave up. Like, it was just like the same talking points all the time. He's a horrible, evil person, blah, 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 and that's really all you need to say.
Well, look at Biden. I'm sorry, go ahead, Stacks.
Oh, sorry. I just think you might be a victim of your, like, the people you're interacting with. Like, because me and Rum1n8, like, talk all the time. Like, I have a bunch of people on the left who are constantly making content, pushing back on a lot of these narratives and trying to educate people on these topics. I don't have this, I'm going to call you a little bit of a defeatist, this defeatist perspective.
Wait, me or him?
No, Destiny.
Well, it's confusing because you guys are the defeaters, but sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen. Childhood insult, throw it back to you. I forget the thing. Anyway, yeah, no, I think you might just be a little bit of a defeatist when it comes to the left. That I think that we are pushing for a lot more of these.
When I say we, I don't mean like small people on any of these social media platforms. Even me, I don't even include that. I'm talking about like the mainstream feel, like mainstream media. It feels like there's just this implicit understanding that you're either with us or you're a fucking moron and you're not worth talking to. That's like
wait, you don't think like huge? Are you talking about like CNN or
MSNBC? Yeah, like all the mainstream. That's what it feels like. The feeling is sometimes, yeah.
Okay. I don't watch a ton of it, but like from what I've seen, a lot of the conversation is like, hey, here's these fucked up things that Trump has done. At least during the Trump era when he was president, like 2018 or so, a lot of the conversations were like, this is fucked up. We need to talk about this. At least from my perspective, I don't know, but I don't watch a ton of.
Actually, I'd argue that the mainstream media, I was just bitching about this today, that I would argue the mainstream media is, if anything, too indulgent for pro-Trump arguments or anti-Democrat, anti-Biden arguments. Classic example, just in the past like 72 hours. And I'm going to mess up her name, but she's on CNN, Breonna Keeler, something like that. Breonna Keeler made a huge to-do on her program and on social media complaining about President Biden's speech, about how it was about specifically the Marines being used as props in the background. And a lot of other people in mainstream media have been complaining about it too. Martha, she's on ABC, Martha something or another. She did an interview with a White House senior strategist today, just this morning, and she said, you know, isn't the president using hate speech, condemning half the country? Like, so I think that if anything, they have, despite this myth that the mainstream media is in the pocket of the Democrats, it's not true. CNN and MSNBC are more likely to complain about Democrats and Biden than Fox News is, you know, likely to complain about Trump and Republicans. So I think, if anything, you've got people like Mehdi Hassan who make like an affirmative case against Trump pretty consistently, but outside of him and others like him, maybe Rachel Maddow, you've got mainstream journalists who I offer, like, they're too generous with the benefit of the doubt towards bad faith actors.
Sure,
like
there might be
Trump.
people that fuck up, or people that, yeah. I feel like, yeah. I don't know what to say. Do you agree with me that people on the left, in like holistically in the totality of society, just seem to be really, really, really bad at advocating for their positions?
Of course.
So until I see that change, I'm not interested in like the mass deplatforming strategy.
Do you think Biden is?
No, I think Biden has done an exceptional job. Biden is my fucking hero. Biden is trying harder than anybody ever in all of mankind. What a god!
Like, when you ask that question of, I'm sorry, I don't know who's cutting off more, but anyway,
you're cutting me off because you're a dick. But okay,
true. I'm very sorry, but I'm not actually. Fuck you.
Well, we're not friends, so I shouldn't expect.
Yeah, exactly. But like when you're saying, let's look at these like specific, if you're pointing to like specific figures, like I don't know who you're thinking of who's like really bad at advocating for positions, like maybe like Hassan or something like that. Like sure, those figures.
Well, no, I mean like you've got like Trevor Noah, Stephen Colbert, a lot of the late night talk show hosts. Like whenever we speak about like Republicans, for a lot of these like mainstream media guys, it feels like it's with so much derision and condescension. It's like dripping with like vitriol. It's like the feeling I get.
You don't think Jon Stewart did that? Like I was a Daily Show fanatic before Trevor Noah, who I like. Jon Stewart's still my guy.
Yeah, I agree that Stewart was pretty mean, but I feel like he did it to everybody. I know that we remember him the most. He was definitely left leaning for sure, but I don't know what it was about Stewart. I have to think about it more. But like Stewart feels at least a little bit more personable, whereas like today, like he felt more kind of like a comedy guy. Whereas today, it was just like, it just feels so much insaner to me in terms of how the people are treated. But
who do you point towards? I guess you listed Trevor Noah, and there was somebody else you listed. Who are bad examples?
Yeah, Colbert, Trevor Noah, a lot of like the late night talk show guys when they talk about like politics is like very derisive.
Who's a good example in your opinion? You can't refer to yourself as a lefty who you think and. Not Stewart, because he's not. He has his own show, but it's like it's on like twice every other year. Who do you think is like a standard bearer for effective rhetoric on the left?
I don't know. I truly don't know. I don't
you
see.
Can't think of any?
Biden? No, yeah, that's the issue. Biden, not really, because he's a political leader. I wouldn't consider him shouldn't be his role. But like, yeah, I would support Biden for what he does. But like everybody else is just so, like, just like condescending. Like John Oliver is like a big guy. Like,
I was about to use him as a great example of an effective communicator.
Do you think so? You don't think his stuff doesn't feel like incredibly like how fucking stupid are these guys over here?
Well, look, if we're using that metric, how has the right succeeded in any way, shape, or form?
They are condescending as fuck.
Because I think the difference between I think the right and the left right now is that culturally, I think everybody in the left's meter is completely full when it comes to like, I feel like my issues are heard and people care about me. But I feel like people on the right don't have that same feeling. I feel like that's why it's so much easier for them to get swept up in things, because if you look at like culturally, we look at like Hollywood or TV shows or music or whatever, like everybody on the left feels like they've got like really good representation throughout all of these like all of these different pillars of society, whereas people on the right probably feel like they have almost no representation. That'd be my guess. So like in terms of like how, like, yeah, wait. So what is the question? Like, why is the right able to get away with?
No, yes. Why are you have such a strong? You're saying the right is doing so much better communication than the left, and you're looking at the left and you're like, well, they're derisive sometimes.
Oh yeah, because I think the right. It feels like on the right they feel like at the very least like I don't know. I don't. It feels like they try harder to communicate their ideas to people, and it feels like on the right, like they do engage in forms of like propaganda. I agree, but it feels like it's harder for them to just like, oh well, this is true, boom, 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 and then you're done. Whereas on the left, like on the right, they can't like shame you as easily as you can on the left for feeling a certain way about something. Like if I say something bad, like it feels like on the left, like it's very easy to kind of look around at everybody else and like, oh well, this guy's like obviously wrong and he needs to be like excised from society and fuck him. Whereas on the right, it feels like they have to try a little bit harder in their messaging. But
I don't know how much I would agree with that. Like, at least from my perspective, I grew up pretty conservative. I grew up pretty religious. Like, always kind of been in conservative circles. Like, when I changed my mind on affirmative action, I was like, hey, maybe this is a fine idea. Like, everyone looked at me like I was fucking crazy, and like I just needed to be like you're racist towards white people. It's like et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like I don't know how much this.
What is the cool thing when you were growing up? Like, what was the cool countercultural shit? It felt like it was to be really far left. Like, I remember, like, social justice kids in high school. These were, like, the kids that were, like, the theater kids, the goth kids, the alt girls. Like, these were the people that were, like, pushing, like, the boundaries of shit. Now it feels like
the
conservative...
Theater kids, I'm sorry, just to clarify, you're saying the theater kids...
Yeah, like, this, like, group of people. They maybe it was only in my high school, but these people were, like, all together. Like, these were, like, the social justice activists were, like, these kinds of kids, like, all kind of hung out, like, in these, like, groups. That's what it felt like.
The theater kids were cool in Nebraska. I just want to make sure I'm hearing that correct.
They were, like, the hipster, like, counterculture kids. Like, that's what they were, right? Now it feels like increasingly for younger people, it feels like the counterculture is becoming conservative again.
Well,
like,
yeah, because
now the cool
is
thing is to
left.
be sure, but I don't know if wait. So what do we disagree with there? Sorry, go ahead.
Maybe I'm lost. Like my sort of question is, why are we more critical towards the left than to the, like, it seems like you're giving the left.
I guess because if the left is going to control like all of these different echelons in society, if the left's going to have that control, I think we still need to be constantly like reinforcing all of our political arguments and making sure that people understand like why we believe the things we do, rather than just like going on this relentless like deplatform and banning spree on every like contradictory thought. Because it feels like at some point what's going to happen is when that pendulum hits that 51% swing back, everything that we've done is gone. Because nobody has any fucking idea how to defend any idea why we believe the things we do, and it's just going to crumble and collapse quicker than the progressive movement did after Bernie lost again.
Just want to be real clear, we're the defeateds, right?
Well, you're the defeatist because you're saying the only way you can hold on to everything is to just ban all opposing thought.
That is not what. Oh,
come on,
son of a bitch! That is not what we said.
Well, okay. How many of you guys agree with Andrew Tate's ban?
I would probably. I don't know enough about Andrew Tate to really.
Yeah, I don't know enough.
But like, probably.
I think he got banned. Sure. He got banned for nothing from everything. Well, he got banned because he's a dangerous person. I don't even know what the fuck that means.
So, real talk, I don't know. I don't know about Andrew Tate. I barely know about the guy that you've been hanging out with a lot, Nico. I don't know much about the red pill stuff because it's just not as overtly political as I like my content.
Sure.
So I don't know if he was like advocating for any sort of like physical aggression towards women or whatnot, then maybe. If he's just like a misogynistic dick, then I support the right of these platforms to withdraw. They're exercising their right. Do I think that it was necessary? It depends on what he was advocating for.
I have a quick question for Destiny. You like when like there's like Reddit conversations or something that you don't really approve of, you're kind of okay with just sort of like deleting those threads or banning specific people from your community, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say that those people should be able to have their freedom, and that we need to sort of like engage with them in the marketplace of ideas, and that we need to just sort of push them out, not ban them, but we need everyone to sort of just collectivize around them so that they don't feel welcome necessarily.
No.
Okay, can you explain? Do you understand where I'm going with this?
Yeah, it's a horrible comparison.
Okay.
There's a difference between being banned from a subreddit and being banned from all of Reddit. I'm not going to sit here and say that every single Twitter person has to entertain every single Twitter thought. If you want to say that, like, I want to ban this guy from my Twitter group space, or I want to block this account or mute this account, I fully like agree with people's rights to do that. If you have YouTube channels where you're like, I don't want any conservatives talking on my channel, and I'm going to turn off comments or whatever. If you want to do that, that's fine. But there's a huge difference between blocking a person communicating on a YouTube channel or not participating in a Twitter space versus saying, well, this person is now banned from all of Twitter or all of YouTube or all of Reddit. I think there's a huge difference there.
It's a microcosm of the issue that you're sort of.
No, I disagree with that. I don't think it's a microcosm of the issue. I think that
it's a slippery slope.
No, I don't think it's a slippery slope. I think people have a right to choose. I don't want you to be part of this community. But there's a difference between kicking somebody out of a community and kicking somebody out of the host of all the communities. I think that's different. Like if you've got like a parking ground where you say everybody can come set up a tent and you show up and like nobody wants you in their tent, that's fine. But if somebody tells you you can't even bring a tent and it's like an open parking ground, I think that's a fundamentally different type of thing.
So are we just equivocating over like size? Do you feel like you don't have like a sizable enough subreddit to specifically ban someone where it would be a problem?
No, my subreddit is a specific community within Reddit. Reddit itself, I think, should be able to host.
But we could say Reddit is a specific sub community on the internet, and we're not banning Andrew Tate from the internet. Like,
that's where I disagree, because I think we have effectively banned Andrew Tate from the internet. When you get to the point to where like 3 or 4 massive online media companies are banning you, and then like a couple credit card processors pop in, you're basically done from the entire internet. That's the scary part. If there were like 25 different large social media platforms, or even like 10, I'd probably be like, okay. If you get banned from one, I would go back to the traditional arguments like, okay, well, they don't have to host you. Like, if you get banned, like, that's on you. Like, just follow the TOS. But when there's like 3 or 4 and they start to act in tandem, that's really fucking weird. Like, if Andrew Tate just got banned from like Twitter or Facebook or whatever because he made something, okay, sure. But I'm pretty sure he got blacklisted from every single social media platform on like the same fucking day. That's pretty crazy. He got removed from the internet. He's gone.
I would probably agree with you. So I guess what I'm saying is if we live in a world where they're not acting in tandem and they are just sort of like, Twitter's just going to say, you know what, I'm done with Andrew Tate, but YouTube's like, no, we'll keep them, and TikTok is like, okay, we're going to restrict their account. Would you now suddenly say like, you know what, I
feel a bit different about it, for sure. I would feel a bit different about it. But it feels like the internet is kind of like one big thing right now, and it all kind of acts together. Like Alex Jones got banned from fucking everything at once. I think Stefan Molyneux did. It was a while ago.
Do you not feel like that was warranted?
Alex Jones?
Yeah.
No,
I know a little bit.
I don't think so. Okay. No. Tell me why.
Well, I mean, he was harassing the children's of parents and encouraging people to show up at their houses.
On those platforms?
No, not on those platforms.
Then I don't think he should be banned for it. Well,
but wait, sorry. Mm-hmm. I thought you were saying not harassing on the platform, but like, yeah, on his
show.
Yeah, on his show he was.
Yeah. But was the show hosted on those platforms?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, because like this is what I don't like is like that. Like if he was like live streaming on Facebook and then he did these things and they banned him, that's fair game, A+. But I don't think that was the case. I think there was a huge public blowback about him relating to his trial, and then all the social media platforms all decided that, okay, well, time to ban him from everything, which feels strange to me. Not good, I should say.
Definitely I can see where you're coming from, and I could be a little bit more. I can give you a little bit of credit and say, it's a little fair that we can be that this mass banning and this mass deplatforming has definitely gone a little egregious at times.
Yeah,
and I think
because I can ask like normal people, like, and I'm only bringing up Andrew Tate not because I'm in like this red pill community shit now, but because it was like national news. It was a big deal when he got banned.
No, for sure.
But like if I ask people, like, why should he have been banned? I've never heard an answer for that before. I don't even know why he got banned. All I could find was that he's a dangerous individual, whatever the fuck that means. But it's like he hasn't overtly like advocated for like any violence or anything like that, and not even like implicitly. He's just like a really far right, traditional conservative value kind of guy in some ways.
Sure, yeah, I guess it's fair.
So what I was wanted to bring it back to the Biden speech again, just real quick, kind of going back real quick because you were covering it earlier. What do you make of the criticism that by speaking so, some would say harshly, others would just say candidly, about a certain constituency, that President Biden was being divisive, and he was only he is contributing to the corrosion of institutions, institutional trust, faith in that. Because now, some people are making the case that now that's even more incentive for the GOP to have less faith in elections and in the presidency and in Democrats to not be punitive. What do you
I would say
think of that?
Biden did a really good job at people like Tim Pool or Lawrence Southern are going to misrepresent him no matter what because they're partisan hacks.
Yeah.
Okay, but I think Biden did a good job at specifying not all Republicans are like this. I know good Republicans. He's very specifically talking about the MAGA crowd that's still to this day contesting the election. I think he did a good job at that, and I'll give him credit for that.
Okay, so you can't bad faith, foolproof political rhetoric, obviously, or political messaging.
Not with everybody.
But
no.
you think he did
That's
probably
what
as
the job's possible.
asymptotically close as he could have.
Probably, aside from the
be
stupid
careful.
fucking camera angle that made him look like the Chancellor in V for Vendetta. But but I mean, I think because I listened to the speech today finally because I was curious because I was traveling when it happened and I know people were losing their mind and I was curious if it was anywhere near as bad as people said. But he did a good job at this was only one small part of the speech, and he did a good job at pointing out that not all Republicans are like this.
Yeah, he explicitly said, and he gave examples of good Republicans that he thinks are criticizing the movement, and then you still got a ton of people on Twitter saying that he's waging war with half of the country all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And I want to do one vibe check on you. The recurring theme of our ongoing conversations as somebody who is a proud and staunch institutionalist and who is pro-America, God damn it, rah rah, go Uncle Sam. Are you more or less concerned, especially now that Biden, bipartisan, affable Uncle Joe Biden, has now publicly spoken about it? The midterms are 2 months away. Are you more, less, or about the same concerned for, I guess, the long-term health of the country?
I mean, I'm always concerned, but obviously Biden is having a massive fucking upswing over the past month or two, so things are starting to look up quite a bit. But I mean,
And that's looking great for the midterms. When that's going to be.
Not in the House. Not in the House. I mean,
does the House really
What do
look
you mean?
rough? Like we could actually lose the House?
538 says that at a 25 out of 100 scenarios, we keep the House.
Oof. Well,
Sure. Yeah.
Now,
But we also
we did.
There was almost
Go
no
ahead.
projections where we would win Alaska as well, which is kind of nice.
That's true. There were five special elections that Democrats had major upsets in, favorable upsets.
Yeah.
So yeah, anything's possible, but we need both, right? I mean,
For sure.
it's not enough. His legislation is dead. His agenda is dead if he doesn't control both chambers.
sure.
Okay. Then, as a vibe check, if that's true, Destiny, let's say the best case scenario happens and we keep the Senate, expand our majority in the Senate, and keep the House. Would you support, since Biden is clearly freaked out, and I'm freaked out, and a lot of people are freaked out about the corroded institutions, would you support Biden passing the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, the John Stewart Voting Rights Act? That'd be hilarious. But the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, federal voting legislation to kind of course correct?
What? I don't even know what that legislation does. Can you tell me?
Well, basically, it would restrict states' ability to regulate national elections. They would have to. It would essentially allow the federal government oversight of what states wanted to do in terms of their voting laws.
I'm not sure. I'd have to think about it.
Because you know about these trigger laws that are going in, I think it's somewhere between 19 to 25 states, red states, are passing legislation to the Georgia voting laws and whatnot to try.
Is it the fear they're trying to do shit to basically make it so that
Yes.
they can throw out elections if Trump doesn't win or some shit?
to depress, number one, to depress voter turnout, to expand ability to gerrymander, and then there's that upcoming Supreme Court case, Moore v. Harper, which would allow state legislatures to essentially rewrite voting maps without judicial oversight. Because in a lot of places now, like North Carolina, the state Supreme Court can review voter maps that the North Carolina State Assembly creates and say, no, this is too gerrymandered, this is too restrictive. redo it. If Moore v. Harper is judged the way that some fear it is by the 6-3 conservative supermajority, it would allow red states to go, we'll draw whatever map we want, and a governor couldn't veto it, and the state Supreme Court couldn't, exercise judicial review. So passing federal voting right laws like the I'm about to do it again, John Lewis Voting Rights Act would limit states' ability to do stuff like that. But then some people say you are intruding
on the state's right to regulate their votes. Yeah, I'd have to really dig into that. I'm not sure.
Fair. I'm okay. You do that, and I will check in with you eventually on that.
Okay.
So I'm gonna dip out. Stacks, it was really good to clear the air and find out that you hate my guts and we're not
Correct.
friends. And
exactly. Yeah, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, I see how it is. And Destiny, always good to talk to you, buddy.
Yep, I love you. Have fun. Be careful, bud.
All right, love you too. Bye.
All right. Yeah, I'll probably dip as well. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm gonna plug my shit for just a little bit. Staxiums on TikTok. Follow me there.
Cool.
That's all.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks so much.
Be careful.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.